Okay, the Gemara Bava Metzia and Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph. This week we're talking about a story that involves Rav Huna and Rav Hisda, and it's a story it's a great story. First of all, the first part of the shiur will be trying to understand what exactly the story is about. We'll see Rav Huna gets very upset at Rav Hisda. We'll try to understand what the source of that anger was and what the story is really talking about. And then the second half of the shiur will try to offer a different explanation to the story than what most of the Mepharshim offer, based on other sugyot. It's based on something that I saw when I was reading about this, and I thought it was a very interesting parish of how to explain the story. Okay, so let's begin. The Mishnah in Bava Metzia, just to give some context. So it's talking about questions of Hashavah Veda, which is what we've been discussing. So it's relevant to the story we're going to bring about Rav Hisda and Rav Huna. So let's just learn the Mishnah now. Okay, I can return. I have two items that I need to return. I have like an item that I have and an item that belongs to my father. So I return my own item first. If I have my item and then I have my Rav's item, so mine comes first. But my Rav's lost object comes before my father's. So the Rav trumps actually your father in the hierarchy of Hashavah Veda because he brings you to Chayil Haba. But obviously if your father
is a father?
We just...
That's biduk what the Mishnah says. What if your dad is himself a father?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's your father. Right. If your father is a chacham, he's also a rav, so then he comes first, okay? So we know there's also a mitzvah to help somebody, right? If there's a burden, you see somebody who's chamor, is struggling with a certain burden, you have to go help him, even if you're not the best of friends. So, same halacha. Okay, the Gemara discusses what's the chidush of the second case. It's not for now. Same thing with redeeming them. That the Rav comes first and then your father. That's your father's also chacham and then you redeem him first. Same halacha. Okay, so that's the context. One of the things that we've seen here is that one of the questions is who do I give to first, to my father or to my Rav? So the Gemara Bava Metzia says as follows: Kavai minei Rav Hisda mi Rav Huna. Okay, Rav Hisda asked Rav Huna, Talmid v'tzarich lo rabo mai. Okay, what's his question? Rav Hisda asks Rav Huna, let's say you have a student, but he has a Rav, but the Rav needs him, is reliant on him. So
Talmid is a mishamish, kind of.
Okay, good. So what does it mean v'tzarich lo rabo? Okay, but you gave a good explanation, which is that maybe the Talmid is a shamish. Well, other Mefarshim give other suggestions, such as just that the Rav is sharpened. Right? There's this idea that I learn more from my students than. Sit down. Sorry, it's a lot of. Okay. That the student is being mishamesh the Rav, like you said, or alternatively, the Rav, through teaching the student, he himself gets sharpened and learns more. There's an idea that the students that you learn more from your student than from your what? That's another explanation that's given. But the point is that you have here a Rav who needs the student. So Rav Hisda, what's he asking? He's asking, I'm talking in the context of these halachot of Hashavah Veda. So I say, is it, so we saw that the Rabbo is kodemet, but what if the Rav needs the student? Then maybe it wouldn't trump the father, for example. And then, in other words, why does the Rav come before the father? Because he's very, he needs more, he's more chashivut.
He brings you
into Olam Haba. But if he's relying on the student, so maybe your father's honor would trump that. Perhaps.
What's this hearing? The Rav comes first because he brings in the Olam Haba?
Yeah, that's what the mission said. Yeah.
I don't understand.
It's interesting logic. If you're dead, you also can't learn. Like,
what do you mean?
Your parents sustain you. Like, if you don't exist.
Yeah,
that's
but
what he's saying. No, he just said it.
The Mishnah said
your dad
you return your
into this world, but your Rav's gonna bring you to.
But it's like the hierarchy doesn't work because without one.
Shimon, you're just getting into the.
Just saying, it's not like.
Okay, without your dad, you won't even get to the Olam Haba. Great.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Either both.
All right, fine. We're not talking about the Mishnah right now. It's more to set the stage. But yeah, I guess you could argue that without your father, you wouldn't have Olam Hazeh or Olam Haba.
If he wasn't alive, so this no is Avodah Torah nothing. So
I can't say I understand the svara here, but
Okay. It doesn't really matter for the continuation of the shiur, but you're raising good questions. The point is that Rav Hisda has asked Rav Huna a question about if you have a Rav who is not just, okay, he's my Rabbi Mufhak and I go to him, but rather there's some kind of dependence on the student, so then does that halacha still apply? Amar le, Rav Huna responded to him, Hisda Hisda, lo צריכנא lach, at צריכת li, ad 40 shnin. So he says, Hisda Hisda, right? I don't need you, you need me. And you need me for 40 years. So what's Rav Huna saying?
You know, the Talmud doesn't understand the stuff in the Rav until 40 shnin.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that's what the Marasha is going to say. And what do you? But why? What does this response mean? In other words, why? How does this answer the question?
Even if I need you temporarily to be mashamish me, there's someone else going to be mashamish me eventually, and also the only reason you're being mashamish me, you need me for 40 years to reach my level of.
Okay, so I think you're assuming what I wanted to say explicitly, which is Rav Huna is applying Rav Hisda's shaila to his own relationship with Rav Hisda. It's not all the time students go to their Rebbeim and ask them shilas, right? So he said, what's the halacha about Hashavat Aveda if you have a rabbi who's dependent on his student? And then Rav Huna says to him, I don't need you. In other words, he's interpreting it personally, right? Which, is that necessarily what Rav Hisda was intending? It's not clear from the question. They got upset at each other and they refused to visit one another because of this.
Why?
Good. We'll talk about why. Very good. We'll find out.
We just said no. Doesn't matter.
Yativ Rav Hisda arbanin ta'aniyata mishum d'chalash date Rav Huna. Yativ Rav Huna arbanin ta'aniyata mishum d'chash de Rav Hisda. And then to do tshuva, they each did a fast for 40 days. Right? Rav Hisda did a fast because
for 40 days.
they didn't eat for 40 days.
Okay.
Rav Hisda fasted
during the night.
they ate at night, but they fasted during the day. Rav Hisda did that because he had offended Rav Huna, and Rav Huna did that because he had suspected Rav Hisda. That's what it says. Okay? So what's going on? So if we look at the Marasha, right, this is what David Moshe said, so we'll skip the Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Marasha says, Mishum da'amrina beperek chele kol meharher achar rabo kilu meharher achar shechina. So the question he's coming to answer is, what's the significance of the 40? 40 years, a fast of 40 days. So we know there's this idea from the Gemara in Sanhedrin that anybody who suspects his Rav, it's as though he suspects the Shechina. Umatzinu b'Shechina she'Yisrael nizufin 40 shana b'midbar.
And then because of the 40 days, Moshe was up with Hashem, and then they got suspicious.
Connected.
Yeah, and then it's like, where is Moshe? He's being over there like 40 days, 40 nights.
Bnei Yisrael were suspecting Moshe.
Connected there?
So I think what is connected is the 40 days of the Meraglim. I thought that they wandered for 40 years because they doubted.
No, I'm saying specifically of the maybe 40 years of Taniyot and all the.
Okay, yeah, it could be. The Yun Yaakov will give some other suggestions as well in a moment. But yeah, Moshe was on the mountain for 40 days. So he didn't eat for 40 days. So there's an idea there of not eating for 40 days, of course. Very good. And the 40 years that is being discussed here, and also the 40 days, the Marsha claims is based on the 40 days and 40 years of the Meraglim. 40 days.
No, that's not what I was saying.
Okay.
There's a thing that the Talmud doesn't come to the understanding of the Rav, Adar Bayim Shni. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's why At Rishat Shli Adar Bayim Shni.
Right. I definitely saw that somewhere. If it wasn't the Maharsha, it was somebody else.
Oh.
So maybe the Yun Yaakov says it now? I forget. One of the commentaries says that, I believe. If we look at the Yun Yaakov, where it says, Ada Arbein Shnein Kapdi, Katav Maharsha, Mishum Damrin Perek Chet, Kol Me'er V'chulei. Ve'afshar Nami, Mishum Damrinan, Perek Kama Davod HaKachim, Lo Kai Inish Adat Edra Be'adam Shnein. Okay, thank you, sorry. So you were right. It wasn't the Maharsha, it was the Yun Yaakov. I knew one of them said it. So yes, the Gemara in the Avodah Zarah says, a person does not realize his Rebbe's Torah until 40 years. And that's what Rav Huna said. You need 40 years with me. And then he says, Gam hu keneged 40 yom shel kabbalat Torah, which is what Kobe said. U keneged haneshama shenotzra l-40. And your soul was created in 40 days. Not sure what that means. The idea that there's a vlad is notzar in 40 days. Maybe that's what he means. That before 40 days, it's not.
It says the
No, it's something else. We're just saying that these are 40 days that you can change from a male to female.
Yeah, because it's not officially. Right, it's not formal.
controversial.
All right. We did all those midrashim already last year in what was it?
In
Nida, right? What? Sorry?
We were talking about the Dinah and Yosef.
Dinah, Yosef, switching, in the womb, switching genders. Yeah, we did, or switching biological sex. Anyway, so good. So yes, Dav Moshe, you were in the Yun Yaakov, and Kobe, your opinion is in the Yun Yaakov, but why they fasted for 40 days. Okay. The Ben Yoyada is... So we answered one question about what the significance of 40 is. What about the fact that they were upset at each other for so long? We're talking here about the Gdolei Ador, of Hunan and Hisda. What kind of behavior is this? Oh, that you said something and maybe you misinterpreted it and maybe meant... Fine, so they didn't understand each other. You get upset. You don't not visit each other for 40 years, right? So what's going on? So see how the Ben Yoyada tries to resolve this. כן צריך לפרש לחבר מילות עד 40 שנין עם צריכת לי וכמו שפרשו בשיטה מקובצת. אך יש מפרשים מחברים עד 40 שנין עם איקפדי ההדדי. Right, if we go back to the language of the Gemara, right, so it says, Hisda Hisda lo צריכנא לך עד צריכה לי עד 40 שנין akapedai או ההדדי. So does the 40 years, is that the end of Rav Huna's statement? You need me for 40 years? Or is it, you need me, and they were upset at each other for 40 years? Right? So the 40 years can go either way. It depends how you read the sugya. So you assumed that Rav Huna actually, and it's interesting because you assumed that Rav Huna was saying, you need to stay with, you need me for 40 years because the Talmud only understands the Rebbe Torah after 40 years. And you assumed, I think maybe, that the 40 years was on the, how long they were arguing with each other. Maybe. But you can read it either way. Okay? So the Ben Yoyada notes that. He says, it depends how you want to understand it. So he says, okay, according to the opinion that Rav Huna said, you need to be by me by 40 years because that's how long the student needs to be like his Rebbe or because of, for whatever reason. And then they were upset at each other for an undetermined amount of time. Maybe it was a short amount of time. But according to the opinion that understands that Adar ben Shnin is how long they were upset at each other, the Ben Yoyada says, how could they be upset at each other for so long? Rav Huna wasn't able to grasp or get over the fact that Rav Hisda hadn't meant to offend him, right? That once Rav Huna said to Rav Hisda, I don't need you, you need me. So then it makes sense, the Gemara doesn't record this, that Rav Hisda would then say, no, I was asking you a halachic shaila in general about if a Rebbe is dependent on the student. I wasn't referring to our relationship, so you don't have to get upset. So Rav Hisda clarified that for Rav Huna. What, sorry?
You said it's not recording it. It is recording it.
It is recording it, yes. I stopped. Right, that's correct, yeah. I had stopped and started it again. Yeah. So V'lo nishar b'libo shel Rav Huna klum. So Rav Huna wasn't upset at Rav Hisda after that clarification. Nolad mizeh de'adar ben shnin ikpidu shelo yelech zeh etzel zeh. So it doesn't say that they were so that for 40 years they didn't go visit each other. Not because that Rav Huna couldn't get over what had happened. It was explained to him, and he understood what happened, and he understood that there was a mistake. The reason that they didn't visit each other for 40 years was כדי שלא ידבר עמו דבר דחש, הקפידו שלא ילך זה אצל זה, כי רב הונא, אחר שידע שחשד את רב חיסדא באותו דבר, הקפיד שלא יבוא לביתו של רב חיסדא, כדי שלא ידבר עמו דבר דחש, אולי יזדמן שידבר דבר זה משתמע לפני אנפי, ויהיה חושדהו, הפך האמת, כאשר חשדו בדבר הזה. Rav Huna did this as an act of prevention, that he said, if I ever go to Rav Hisda's house, he may say something that could be interpreted the wrong way, I may get upset again. I don't want to get upset again, so I'm going to avoid ever going to him again. And that's why he separated himself, not because he was upset about what happened. He understood that he had misunderstood, but he still didn't want to go visit Rav Hisda after that, for that reason. Sorry?
It's a bit extreme.
It is a bit extreme. Yeah.
Why did they do that?
If you take that approach always, you're not going to spend any time with that guy. Then
Yeah.
People do extreme things to prevent. I just read a story. It's just the rabbi told Rabbi Abraham Shem Tov, who was a big shliach, whatever, to be careful during an event, before an event about Chalav Yisrael. This was like in the 60s or something. Since then, he hasn't had any dairy.
Okay.
Over 40 years.
That's
I'm saying. So people
Maybe he's allergic.
go at lengths to be careful.
You say 40 years.
very good.
You know the story about Rav Moshe Feinstein with Chalav Yisrael? This is like a famous story about him.
He martyred it for the woman who. That's where the psak comes from in the first place.
Oh no, I don't know what that is, but no, it's just that he was at some gathering and his students saw him going, and he would like pick up a thing of milk, he would shake it, like look at the carton and put it back down, and go to the next carton, like shake it, pick up, put it back down. The students were like, oh, what's so they didn't understand. They're trying to figure out what's because he was with Chalav Yisrael. So they went up to him afterwards. They said, like, Rabbi, we didn't understand. We couldn't help notice that we saw you were, looking at these milk cartons, and we noticed it's some Chalav Yisrael. He says, no, they were empty. It's a classic story. Yeah. Well,
No, he has a famous shuvah, which is why, like Formula in America drink Cholaf Tamarol is from his
psak, right? That it's mashgiach of the USDA. Yeah. Okay, so good. Where were we? Okay, fine. That explains why Rav Huna didn't visit Rav Hisda. Why didn't Rav Hisda visit Rav Huna? Because it says neither of them went to the other one. וכן רב חיסדא היה קפיד שלא ילך לבית רב הונא, כי חש אולי יזדמן שידבר דבר בשוגג, שיהיה נחלש בהודעת רב הונא, כאשר נחלש בדבר הזה. Okay, so, and he was afraid that he might say something that Rav Huna would interpret incorrectly. So for him to be careful, he also didn't go visit him. Okay, ולכך הרחיקו עצמן זה מזה.
When did they go to each other?
So according to this interpretation, good question, it was after 40 years.
How old were they when it started?
That's a good question. It doesn't say.
How old were they when they needed?
It doesn't say. 40 years later. It doesn't say how old they were when it happened. ולעולם דבר זה, good question, ולעולם דבר זה עצמו של החשד יצא מליבו של רב הונא תכף, כי ידע רב חיסדא דיבר לפי תומו, ולא נתכוון כאשר חשב הוא. But the Ben Yehoyada is going out of his way to explain that there was no way Rav Huna was angry for that long and held a grudge for that long. That can't be what this Gemara means. Okay. I want to kind of take what the Ben Yehoyada is struggling with and kind of raise the question, which is, we can either accept Ben Yehoyada's explanation, which, like you said, it means that they're acting in an extreme way, and it's obviously not the pshat, or we can say that there was this action here of them separating themselves from one another for 40 years, or for a long period of time. Even if the 40 years is going back on the, that's how long a student needs to be with his teacher. And why did they behave in that way? Right? How could Rav Huna and Hisda have acted in that way?
This is only if you read it that Arbon Shnin Tiktadu Ahadadi.
Yeah, but even with the Arba'in Shnin goes before, there's still that they didn't visit each other for some amount of time.
At least a month and a half.
For-
It says 40 Tanya.
They did it, and then they did a fast for 40 days after they were upset and didn't visit each
A
other.
month and a half, they didn't see each other.
Yeah, meaning
They weren't necessarily not seeing each other during the fast.
as strong.
Yeah.
Right, but there is still a question of why didn't they visit each other? Just because they misspoke, why couldn't they have just clarified the point and then gotten over it or forgiven one another?
Why
Why was there any hakpada that they didn't visit each other? 40 years, of course, is a long amount of time. But even if it's a month and a half, or even a week, is what kind of? So, we're going to develop now. We're going to develop now a mahalach by looking at a few other gemaras that hopefully will give an entirely different approach to this story. Okay, so we're going to start by analyzing the relationship between Rav Huna and Rav Hisda. Right? We've been saying that Rav Huna was Rav Hisda's Rebbe. The truth is, and some of the Mefarshim mention this, there is a relationship that's brought up in the Gemara of like a Talmid Chaver, Rav Chaver, like someone who is your Rebbe and also your colleague, right? That there is this relationship where he's not your Rav Mufhak, he's something in between. And that was the relationship between Rav Huna and Rav Hisda. That Rav Huna was his Rebbe, but he was also kind of his on his same level. We'll see, though, from these examples that Rav Hisda clearly saw himself as the student of Rav Huna and relied on Rav Huna's authority. If you look in the Gemara in Eruvin and Daf Samach Ben Amud Bet, Mahu le'iruye b'mkom rabo. So are you allowed to issue a halachic ruling in a place where your Rav resides? Or is that considered disrespectful, right? And, as overriding his authority.
Like in a city or in like a shul?
Another question.
Good.
In the city,
It'll talk about that. That's a good question. So Amar Le, so afilu bi'ata de bekutcha ba'u mine Rav Hisda kol shnei Rav Huna velo orei. Okay, so even an egg in a dairy dish. Forget the example. It's saying they used to ask Rav Hisda about cases that are very straightforward to paskin, like this one. All the years that Rav Huna was around, velo orei, and Rav Hisda refused to issue a ruling, even though it was an obvious ruling. So what does that show? That shows that Rav Hisda saw himself as the student of Rav Huna, to the point that he refused to issue a halachic ruling at the same time.
Where they were. Like,
correct.
Rav Hisda was traveling around the world. We
Good,
know that.
good. We're getting to it. Very good. Yes. So Amar le Rabbi Yaakov bar Abba le Abaye, Kegon Megillat Ta'anit diktiva umancha. Okay, so another example of a ruling that is not, you wouldn't do when your rabbi is in the same place. Ma'ule ruye be'atre d'rabbe. But what about in terms of location, right? The place of your Rav. So Amar le, hachi Amar Rav Yosef, afilu bi'ated b'kuchtcha, ba'u minei Rav Hisda, kol shnei Rav Huna v'lo orei. So if they're in the same place, the same location, Rav Hisda, all the time that he was in the same location as Rav Huna, he didn't issue a halachic ruling. However, Rav Hisda orei b'kafrei b'shnei Rav Huna. But when Rav Hisda went out to the kfarot, to the villages, when he wasn't in the same city as Rav Huna, and then he was asked to Shaila in a different city, he would issue a ruling. Mm-hmm. So this principle of don't issue a halachic ruling when in the same place as your Rav means when you're in the same place. But if, according to this, at least, if you go somewhere else, then you're allowed to. But we clearly see from here that Rav Hisda, saw himself as the student of Rav Huna. Another example is this Gemara in Moed Katan of Chafei Amud Aleph. Kinach nafshe de Rav Huna. When Rav Huna passed away, savur le'otov sefer Torah apuraye. They wanted to put a sefer Torah on his bier, on his coffin. It was something that was to show that he was a big Torah scholar, to show he was a big Rav. Out of a sign of kavod, they wanted to put a Torah scroll on his coffin.
Did they?
They did not, as we will see right now. Amar lehu Rav Hisda, good question. Milta de bechaye lo svirele hashta lekum le la'avid le. So Rav Hisda said, Rav Huna himself was against this practice of putting a Sefer Torah on people's coffins when he was alive. So now you're going to go do it to him when he's dead? Right? The Amar of Tachlifa. Ana chazite Rav Huna debayla meitav apurei. There we have a testament of one time Rav Huna wanted to sit on a bed. V'hava manach Sefer Torah alei, and there was a Sefer Torah on the bed. V'kaf kad ha'ara ve'otiv Sefer Torah alei. So he took like a jug, he turned it upside down, put it on the floor, put the Sefer Torah on the jug, and only then sat on the bed. Meaning he felt that it was inappropriate to sit on the bed with the Sefer Torah on it. So kal v'chomer to be placed on a casket. Alma kasav asur lesheva gabei mitash Sefer Torah munach aleh. You're not allowed to do this. That was Rav Huna's opinion. So now you're going to go do it to him. So then the people listened, okay, who were in charge of the burial. It continues. Lo hava nafik puria mibava. They tried to take Rav Huna's coffin out from the door or the gate, and it didn't fit.
We don't use coffins. It's a modern thing that we have to do because of other countries. Jews are not, like, we don't hold
Right, it's a mitah.
Mitah. Yeah, it might not have been a closed casket, but they put him in a shrouds. Yeah. Savur l'shilshulei derech gagin. So they couldn't get him out of the door. So they thought, let's put him up to the roof and we'll lower the body down from the roof. Okay?
Then you have to move out of the apartment after you build the apartment. So you get the guys with the crane out the window.
Get the crane.
The movers.
What did they want to do?
They wanted to take, right, when somebody passes away, so
Well,
you have to take their body and bury it in the big farod. So they couldn't get him out from the front door. It didn't fit.
Why did they need to get
Why
him
didn't
out?
fit?
They wanted to take him to
Was
bury
he-
him. What?
He wasn't there were
No,
two
Rav
Rabbanim, I don't
Papa.
remember who.
No, Rabbi
No, the Rabbi Yochanan, another one that said they were so
very
fat.
big, yeah.
that he used to, איך אומרים, להצמיד את הבטן שלהם, אז שור היה עובר
Oh,
מתחת.
good. So we're going to get to those Gemaras. in Bava Metzia. I love
so
it.
excited.
Oh, those are great.
Just one of the oxen.
Yeah.
I just said that,
How
Shimon,
much you
just in
laughing
Hebrew.
about that?
Oh my gosh. I was laughing about that Gemara so much. We're going to do it Bezrat Hashem in the next couple of months. Those
Months?
are great stories. I'll tell you.
Months.
Yeah, it's above.
Yeah, but I mean,
Oh, this is, we're not.
in between this and that is Tanur Shalachnai. There's a lot of good Agadata on the way. But
What's your favorite one?
we'll talk, probably that one, or the continuation of that one, which maybe you'll go to sleep for that one. Anyways,
Why?
I'm joking. Okay, the point is, here they wanted to lower him from the roof. Amar lu Rav Hisda, ha gemir namine, chacham kvodo derech petach. So Rav Hisda is causing all these problems, right? You have these poor guys, they want to go bury Rav Huna. Rav Hisda says, like, you can't do this, can't do this, can't do that. He says, Rav Huna used to say that a chacham needs to go out through a doorway. It's disrespectful to lower him from the roof. So if he used to say that, you can't do it to him. Savur la'ashnuye mipur lepur. So they say, okay, we won't take him out through the front door, we'll take him out through the side door. Amar le Rav Hisda, hachi gemir namine chacham kvodo b'mitar rishona. No, you have to take him out the front door. He's a chacham. It's disrespectful to take him out from the side door. דאמר רבינה מרב, מניין חכם שכבודו במיטה ראשונה, שנאמר וקיבר את ארון אלוקים אל הגלה חדשה. So what did they do? פרוס בava והפקוע. So they just broke the door down and they took him out through the front because they didn't have any other options, okay? So
Don't say why he didn't through, he was too fat.
he was on a bed and the bed was too wide for the doorway. It wasn't his
What did
body.
they do?
They opened the doorway so that they could fit him in the bed
They
through.
broke the door?
Yeah.
But why?
Okay. So we see here that Rav Hisda again is clearly the student of Rav Huna, in the sense that he's. Could you please? Okay. So we see that Rav Hisda is clearly the student of Rav Huna. Okay, so what? Rav Hisda is the student of Rav Huna, but as I said before, yeah, he's like his Talmud Mufak, right? That he's being consulted about his burial. It's clear that he's his main student. Okay. So what I want to suggest now in the last few minutes is a different way of reading the story that we had. Now, since we see that Rav Hisda was Rav Huna's student, the way we've understood this until now is that, Rav Huna got insulted or upset that Rav Hisda said, Talmud v'tzarich lo rabo, because he thought that Rav Hisda was insinuating that Rav Huna needed Rav Hisda in terms of him being a shamish or in terms of his Torah. But if we look at the next few Gemaras, we'll develop a slightly different mahalach. We look in the Gemara Megillah and Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. It says the following: Rav Huna hava asar rita v'kai kamid. So Rav Huna, one time he wore a straw belt and stood before Rav. Amar le, my hi. So Rav said to him, "Why are you wearing a straw belt?" Amar le, lo hava li kidusha umishaknate lehamniate v'ate be kidusha. So Rav Huna said, "I didn't have enough money for kiddush." So I pawned off my belt so that I could do kiddush. Amar le yeher avad titom b'shirai. So Rav, in response, said to Rav Huna, "May it be Hashem's will that you be covered in silk, so that you won't have these issues anymore." Ki ichlal Rabba brei. So fast forward, Rav Huna's son Rabba got married. Rav Huna inish gutza haba. Okay, this is actually funny because this is what you said before. You were talking about Rav Huna. Was he big or small? Rav Huna was a very small man. Yudafka tiny.
How small?
Gana apuria, and he was lying down on the bed. Atin bante v'kalte shalchan v'sheidan binayu ale ad itum b'shirai. He was so small that the bridesmaids at his son's wedding They came into the room. He was lying on the bed. They didn't see him, and they threw all of their like silk garments on top of him because they didn't know he was on the bed. They didn't see him. That's how small he was. Okay.
I was just thinking that. I was like, no one's going to get the reference. Wow.
You were friends.
I was just thinking, I was like, I'm not going to say it. Nobody's going to...
Off the record.
How small is that?
He was just
As big as in this?
no.
Yes.
He was a person. He was just not a
He
tall
wasn't
person.
an adult tree. He was just a small tree. Okay. Let's say that.
So Shama Rav v'ikpid. Okay, Rav heard, and he was upset. Why was he upset? Amar, my time lo amart li ki berachticha v'chein lamar. No, as Rav said, look, I gave you a bracha that says you should be covered in silk, and then all these people threw silk all over you. So when I gave you that bracha, you should have said to me, oh, you should also have a bracha.
Like a Rosh Hashanah night when everyone waits for you to do the whole long spiel so you can say v'chein lamar.
Right, v'chein lamar. I love v'chein lamar. So here we go.
So what was the ikbid about that he...
Rav,
He didn't give him the
that
bracha
he
back.
didn't give him the bracha back, because he says, if my bracha came true for you,
I could have also
so I could have also gotten blessed if
Yeah,
you had
but
said
it
v'chein
was
lamar.
Literally, it was...
Right. But still, in some sense, yeah. Right, it's not clear if that was just they threw it on them and then they discovered he was there and they took it back and he was still poor, or if he somehow became rich from
What
it.
he took it and
But what's clear from this story? What's the first thing that's clear about Rav Huna?
The
the beginning.
come true.
Yes, but like in the very beginning, what do we know about Rav Huna?
He's a very extreme guy.
We know he's extreme, and we know he's very poor. He's poor to the point that he has to sell a belt in order to buy wine for Kiddush and
It's
Shabbat.
very extreme because I don't know what does it mean by a Kiddush.
It's like Kiddush and Shabbat, yeah. So he didn't have. What?
Yeah, you can make Kiddush from Challah.
I think the context, if I remember correctly, is Kiddush for Shabbat, but we can check them first in there.
That would make more sense because Kiddush on Shabbos you can make on your Challah, on your food. On your,
Right, if you're poor.
Yeah.
So it was like a midat chasidut, like he wanted to go above and beyond to do it properly.
Either way, it's the same thing. He's very poor.
Yeah, he's clearly poor, though,
we have-
right?
we
Even if
have-
it's some other Kiddush.
Whatever.
You know,
You know the
financial
story of
struggles.
the Shaila, if you can make Kiddush, Pesach Seder on milk, and then the Rav gave him money. It's a famous story of some Rebbe who, this woman came, someone, and said, can I use milk for abakosis?
Okay.
And the Rav gave her a ton of money for Seder. And then she left, and the Chassidim said, you don't need that much money to buy grape juice or wine.
Right.
He said, no, the fact that she was willing to use milk for abakosis means she wasn't planning on having meat either at the Seder. So I gave her enough money to also buy food.
Very good. Oh.
With my sister.
So what do you see about Rav Huna? He loves being on the bed. And
Right,
he
these
was
two
a very
stories
small
happen
guy.
to be him on
I think
beds.
he was a very
Yeah.
small guy as well.
And he was small, yes. So the point that I wanted to make is that he was poor. If you look in
It's like reading
Psachim...
comprehension in school. Like, what facts have you learned?
Right, yeah,
Small
exactly.
guy who likes sleeping on bed.
It's like sleeping on beds, yes. Right, it's telling us details about Rav Huna. He had perhaps an extreme personality. He didn't have a lot of money, and he was small, and he was on beds a lot. The Gemara in Psachim, on Daf Kuf Yud Gimel, it says as follows: Amar Rav Papa, I lo deramai sachra lo I atre. So Rav Papa says, if I was not a dealer of beer, I would not have become wealthy. In other words, I became rich through dealing in beer. Iku de Amre, there are some who say, Amar of Hisda, ilo de ramai sachra lo atre. Some say Rav Hisda says, if I hadn't been a dealer of beer, I would have become wealthy. Meaning he was wealthy. So, where am I going with this? The Gemara in Psachim and Daf Kuf Zayin
He was
Amud
a
Aleph.
student, maybe that's why he said you needed me, because he has money and he used to give him money, as Shimon said. He used to pay for his other Seder, maybe. And, no, I'm saying something similar. It's like,
Right, exactly. That's where we're going with this, okay? So look at this Gemara in Psachim and Daf Kuf Zayin. Bava Metzia Rav Huna mi Rav Hisda. Okay, so first of all, question. Right, Rav Hisda was the Talmud Mufak of Rav Huna, as we saw. So Rav Huna is asking Rav Hisda a halachic shayla now. Ma'u lekidushe ashichra. Are you allowed to make kiddush on beer? Amar hashta ma pirzuma v'te'enei v'asnei deba'ai minei mirav v'rav mirbichia v'bichia mirebi v'lo pasha le'shichra mibaya. So Rav Hisda answered and said, these different types of wine, of beers, like date beer or fig beer and different types of beers. So they asked Rav, what to ask Rabbi Chia, what to ask Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. None of them knew if that's considered chashuv enough for Kiddush or not. So you're going to ask me about Shichra, which is even less important. So how, those were not enough for these great Rabbanim to know clearly that it was okay. So Shichra, of course I can't know that it's okay to use. Right? Now, we just saw that, at least according to one Girsa, Rav Hisda dealt in beer. Like that was how he made a living. And he got rich off of it. So one way to understand this is that, why did Rav Huna ask Rav Hisda, even though he was a student, this question? Because Rav Hisda was an expert in different types of beer. So he would know if the beer that is being referred to should have qualified as being chashuv enough, because he had the domain expertise of beer. But what's another possible reason why Rav Huna might be asking Rav Hisda, Ma'lu kiddushe ashichra? Because we saw...
Maybe he was trying to get money for Kiddush.
Right. Rav Huna doesn't have money for Kiddush. He has to sell his belt, and he wears a straw belt. And Rav Hisda has a lot of beer. He's a beer
He
maker.
also checked.
What do you mean?
Wanted to see if he's gonna be a poisek.
Oh, good. So that's the Yavitz. So we'll skip the Rosh Hashanah for a second. Look at the Yavitz. So look what the Yavitz says. L'nasoto im yada le'ashivlo. In other words, he was testing him, his student, to see if he was able to answer the question. This happens a lot, right? We shouldn't be concerned that a rabbi is asking his student a question. He wanted to test his chops. So if Hisda talmid chaver Rav Huna hava, that's what we said before. Mishum hachi ka'amina lechadude le'kavai. You want to sharpen him to see, okay, you deal in beer, let me ask you this question to see if you know kind of what the halachic implications of that is. If you look at the Rashash, we go back, Tzarich lomar behefech, Rabbi Chanana, Rav Huna, Rav Hisda mi Rav Huna, v'chein haktiv barosh, that the Rashash says, this is actually a Taut Sofer, and you have to swap them. Because why would Rav Huna ever ask a question from Rav Hisda? It should be Rav Hisda asking a question from Rav Huna because he's a student. But the Yavit says, like Kobe, you don't have to swap them. You can say that he was just...
But even then, the Yavit is a little problematic because his answer, he doesn't mention anything about his domain expertise. And he references people who may not have a domain expertise.
Right. The Yavit is confined just to saying the fact that there's a rabbi asking a student this question shouldn't bother us, because rabbis can ask students questions in order to test them and to sharpen their halachic thing. What we're trying to argue is to take the Yavitz one step further and say it's not just stam that he's testing a student, but it's because of Hisda perhaps was a seller in beer, and that he had and the reason Rav Huna is asking him about what about Kiddush on beer is because he couldn't afford wine, right? Because he was too poor to afford wine, as we saw in the Gemara in Megillah. So, and here's the bombshell that Shimon likes to bring the bombshell. Let's go back now and reread the Gemara in Bava Metzia with this framing in mind. Okay? You have a student whose rabbi needs him. So what's the halacha? So, Amar lo'e, Hisda lo צריכנא לך, at צריכת li ad arba'in shnin, that he's saying, that it's like Kobe said before, perhaps Rav Hisda was, and this isn't uncommon either, right? He was the benefactor of Rav Huna, put it that way, right? He provided for him. You have this, that you have Rabbanim, and then there's a shamish, not in the sense of he served him, but in the sense that he paid for him because he was wealthy. And Rav Huna, right, couldn't. So when Rav Hisda comes and asks Rav Huna, who is on his payroll, what's the halacha about Hashavad Aveda if you have a Rav who's dependent on his student? So it's not in the sense of, because his student will sharpen him because Lamati Yoter Mi Talmidah Yoter Mi Kulam. It's because, so he said, no, Rav Hisda is asking me this because I'm dependent on him financially. And so then, Ikapdayu Ahadade Velo Aile Legabe Ahadade. That the reason they separated from each other is specifically because they realized it wasn't from a place of not being able to get over the grudge, but they realized that it wasn't healthy or it wasn't good for that relationship for Hisda to be providing for Rav Huna, but for him also to be his Talmid Mufak, because it would lead to issues like this of jealousy and holding grudges. So they said, this isn't the right way for our relationship to work. Right? And then, and once they separated, they each fasted for the fact that they had upset the other one because they didn't want to do that, right? They got upset in the sense that there was like this instant like flare up perhaps of anger, but But what we like to argue is that it's based kind of like on what the Yavitz was saying, but like I said, taking it one step further, that maybe what's hiding behind this is not a tzarich lo rabo in terms of Torah study, but rather in terms of economic need. And if Rav Huna was really as poor as the Gemara Megillah would suggest, maybe that's what's hiding behind Rav Huna's anger in this story. So that's just something I wanted to suggest.
Huh. I mean, there's a lot going on here between the two.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously had a close relationship, right?
For up to a certain point. But even at 40, or however long it was, let's not say 40 years, was out of their... Like, if they separated, because that was the most recommended thing for the healthy, the health of their relationship, what was the fasting for? Meaning, was the fasting to atone for their separating? Or
No, the fasting is because they made
the
it...
incident itself.
Right. I mean, it says that explicitly.
Right.
They fasted to atone for the incident, but then perhaps the reason they separated from each other... Now, this story would flow just as well if he said, Lo צריכנא לך צריכת לי. And then they got upset at each other. You skip, they didn't visit each other. And then they sat for a fast because they had gotten upset at one another. The fact they didn't visit each other this is already my kind of chiddush or whatever is because they realized that the way that the relationship, that the fact that he was his Talmid Chaver, but that he was dependent on him, meant that there needed to be some boundaries to kind of maintain that level of authority that Rav Huna should have had from Rav Hisda.
It's interesting that they both chose to fast that length of time.
For
They didn't
40
have a
days?
conversation about it because they didn't go to one another.
Very good. So they independently decided it was
40 days.
necessary.
That's
Like,
Well, they made up first. The fast was after they didn't see each other, no?
yeah. It's not clear if they fasted after they then
Reconciled.
or not. Yeah.
it could also, I mean, you could see they got angry at each other as the initial reaction. And then they didn't stay for each other, they didn't go to each other for 40 days, essentially, during this, like, their initial reaction got angry. He went away from his rabbi, and they both independently, 40 days, introspection.
Yeah. To read it that way, you have to read it, going back to the Ben Yehoyada, that the 40 years is part of Rav Huna's statement.
Yeah.
Not how long they were upset at each other.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, shkoyach.